going on, everybody? Welcome back. Unreal here, and today we're going to be discussing some creepypasta stories. And today, guys, I'm going to be sharing a very interesting story that I was reading on Creepypasta for you today. Several stories, mind you, in which case are very, very good. So I hope you all just sit back and enjoy. I want you guys to use your mind and envision all of this happening to you and what exactly you would do in a situation like this. So let's not waste any time and begin. Tonight's like every other night. You lay there in the dark and silence alone, with no company other than your own thoughts. You shift and roll throughout your bed, just you and your thoughts. You ponder, you plan, you fantasize, anything to distract you from the ringing silence that surrounds you. You hear a creak, a common sound to hear on such a still night, but you still recoil when the sound hits your ears. You hear the sound almost every night, but the sheer unexpectedness sets off a trigger in your head as paranoia takes over. The thought that once illuminated your mind are now darkened. What was once pleasure and success has now turned to demons and killers. The silence that your mind has been distracting you from has now become focus. You lay there, silent, listening for any obscure sound, hoping that the silence doesn't leave. Every little noise adds to your paranoia, and the silence lingers as you await the unexpected obscurity. You're too afraid to open your eyes at the thought of seeing anything your mind can't conjure. You lay there alone in fear. The fear builds up in your mind as you try to find a quick escape from anything it creates. You revert to your childhood solution, hiding under your covers. You pull the blanket over your head and lay in silence. You hear noises, but they don't seem as scary. You figure if they can't see you, you're safe. The heat builds up under your blanket, but you put up with it simply for the comfort it supplies. You begin to calm down and relax, and revert to your usual logical self. It's just you and your thoughts again, alone, under your blanket. You think of how silly it was to get so scared and worked up over something so silly, a silly noise. Eyes closed, you lifted the blanket off your face. As the built-up heat is released, you breathe a sign of relief and roll over, only to hear a deep, granting voice whisper, "Oh, there you are," as the sounds of footsteps creep towards your bed. Story number 2. When I was a kid, I would race up to the top of the stairs as fast as I could, like it was some sort of silly game. Well, I must have been around 5 or 6 at the time, I'm not sure, but I know I was very little. Somewhere along the way, a voice at the top of the staircase would begin to whisper to me and make bets, such as I would bet a penny you could not make it to the top of the stairs. I don't really think there was any certain amount of time or anything. As I said, I was very little, so I hardly remember. So I probably didn't have any counting abilities anyway. I recall just sitting on the top of the stairs having conversations with this voice about betting all sorts of things. Eventually the voice, it was like a whisper of a man's voice, not my own voice in my head, however, started to make a bet of my life. Instead of betting pennies, it'd say, "I would bet your life you can't make it to the top of the stairs." As I got older, the voices began to stop. I never really thought about it at all. I never mentioned it to anyone until one night I was sleeping over my brother's place and we were talking about spooky stories. Out of nowhere, I brought up the voice on the top of the stairs and my brother got all quiet. Before I even mentioned anything, he said, "Did it make bets with you too?" We both looked at each other, horrified, as we heard a giggle come from the end of the hallway up the stairs. It was dark. We didn't know what to do. I looked at my brother as he looked at me, and we watched and listened as we heard loud thumping footsteps come down from the top of the stairs. Story number 3. When I was a child, I lived in a rented 2-floored house. Both my parents worked, so I often was alone, especially when I came home from school. One early evening when I came home, the house was still dark. I called out, "Mom?" and I heard a voice say, "Yes?" from upstairs. I called my mom again, and again, I got the same yes reply. I feel like she was calling back at me, so I climbed up the stairs. When I reached the first floor, I called out for her once again, and I heard her say, "Yes?" come from the furthest room. I felt both uneasy but a strong urge to see my mother, and I started to walk towards the room. But just that moment, I heard the front downstairs door open and my mother came in, carrying a lot of shopping bags. "Sweetie, are you home?" my mother called out in a cheery voice. Hearing her voice made me feel instantly better, and I turned back to go downstairs at once, but not before I had a quick glance towards the room. While I watched from the top of the stairs, the door to the room slowly began to crack open. For a brief moment, I saw a strange figure in there, a pale face, staring back at me. Story number 4. When I was a child, I never truly believed in ghosts or demons. I often thought if you can't see them or hear them, then they don't really exist. I remember my sister often used to tell me stories about how Grandma and Grandpa always used to talk about how back in the day, Grandma used to see things around the house. She used to hear things, strange things. She used to tell us about a name, a woman by the name of Mary. I remember asking my sister about who this Mary person was, but she couldn't really tell me. I remember her telling me one time never to mention her name around the house. One dark and lonely night, I remember being there alone, watching TV. I had nothing else to do and my little brother was asleep. My sister wasn't home, so I decided to get on the family computer and look up this Mary person. I come to find out that there was something on this person, an urban legend that dated back hundreds of years ago. Often people would say never to mention her name in front of the mirror, especially quoting Bloody after saying her name. Bloody Mary, I said to myself, that can't be real. It's impossible. I remember after reading the article, I tried testing the theory, but I wanted to make sure that this was real, so I started looking up accounts on actual documentations on people saying the name and the effects that it had upon saying it. I still didn't believe in ghosts or demons. This didn't really convince me any other, but when I looked up information on people who actually stated they saw things, they heard things, they felt certain presence and entities around them after saying the name in front of the mirror, I began to question whether or not this was actually real. From there, I took necessary precautions. I made sure everybody was asleep, the lights were all off, and I followed the necessary steps given in order for me to find out whether or not this is really real. I made sure all the lights were off in the bathroom, and I did exactly what they told me. I brought a candle in with some matches. I closed the bathroom door and I looked in the mirror. I made sure I had my camera with me just in case something did occur. I would have evidence to show people, but I really wasn't convinced. I felt as if nothing really was going to happen because, again, if you can't see it, and if you can't hear it, it's not there. I proceeded to light the candle, placed my camera on my tripod, took the lit candle and put it in front of the sink, and then I began to chant. I said her name 3 times, very slowly. I repeated it one after the other after the other. There was darkness, silence in the bathroom. There. I knew it. This couldn't be real. Nothing happened. I didn't feel anything. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. All of those people, every single one of them, must have been lying when they said they saw her. They must have been lying when they said that they felt something around them. They must have been lying when they said they heard noises in the dark, when they couldn't really sleep. So then I proceeded to grab my camera and blow out the candle. But then I noticed something very eerie happen in the bathroom. The candle just decided to blow itself out. I paused for a second in the darkness wondering what went wrong. I probably forgot to close the bathroom window, but there was no breeze coming in. So how could this be? I remember trying to turn on the bathroom light and it wasn't working. I flicked it over and over again and nothing would come on. I proceeded to take my camera and use its light as illumination to keep the bathroom lit. I saw something in the mirror. I couldn't really make out what it was. It just happened so fast. I caught it by the side of my eye, a short glimpse of what appeared to be like hair. I was beginning to panic. Is there somebody in here with me? It can't be. My siblings are all sleeping and I'm the only one awake. So then I proceeded to grab my camera and leave the bathroom, but the doorknob was not turning. I couldn't get out of the bathroom. I began to scream really loud. I began to call my sister's name, but nobody was coming to help me. I remember hearing something in the darkness behind me next to the showers. It was a really dark, monotone sound, something as if it was growling at me. I slowly turned around as my skin began to crawl. I had goosebumps on my neck because I felt as if something was in there with me. I heard growling in the darkness. I couldn't make out what it was. All sorts of things were just looming upon my mind. What could be inside the bathroom with me? I began to shout, "Who's in there? Show yourself." But then nothing. The growling stopped. I felt an eerie feeling upon me as if somebody was watching me in the bathroom beyond the darkness. I was petrified, horrified. I looked back in the mirror, as with my camera, and I began to say to myself, what have I done? If this is real, this is really happening to me then, because if it's not, this exact event wouldn't be occurring to me right now. It was at that moment that I began to see a face appear in the mirror. A very old woman, morbid looking, terrified. Her eyes looked like they were gouged out. Blood covered her entire face. Her hair was as wet as if she just came out of the shower, blood soaked. She was just standing right behind me. I quickly looked behind me, but I couldn't really see anything because it was too dark. I was beginning to sweat. My palms felt really heavy. My knees were shaking and I had a knot in my stomach. There was a woman behind me. She's in there. She's inside the bathroom with me. Hiding behind the shadows. Hiding behind the darkness. I was petrified because I didn't really know what I was looking at, nor who I was looking at. I slowly then began to look in the mirror. I turned around and she was right there, standing right in front of me. I couldn't move. My body was frozen. The image that she bestowed upon me will haunt me for as long as I live. I let out a giant scream. I didn't really know how to react. I threw my camera on the ground and I began to cry. I heard laughter in the darkness. Very old laughter, as if an old woman was laughing very maniacally and slowly. I heard footsteps running up the stairs. I didn't know how to react. This was it, I believe. Suddenly, there was a big thump on the door. I heard my name being called. Ashley? Ashley! It was my brother. I cried out to him to help me out, to help me get out of the bathroom. He began kicking the door. I couldn't really see what was going on, but I knew that she was there with me. All of a sudden, it's as if I felt a hand touch my shoulder. I completely panicked. I ran to the door and I started banging on the door as hard as I could. "Help me," I yelled out. Needless to say, my brother kicked down the door. I was so relieved to see light, to see his face, to be protected. I ran right past him and I told him what I have saw. "There's a woman in there. She's in there with me. Mary." My brother looked at me with a face of confusion. He walked in, turned the light on, and looked around. He didn't see or find anything. He told me that it's best for me to get some sleep, and we'll talk about it in the morning. I was petrified. I couldn't really sleep, nor did I know how to. I decided to go to my room, close my windows, lock my door, and go to bed. I stood in my bed, wondering what I had just seen. Could it have been in my imagination? Was I really seeing things? Or were the events that I've seen in my bathroom really real? I began to close my eyes. I was getting sleepy because I know I felt it. I was scared nonetheless. I put my blankets over my head and proceeded to go to sleep. As I was going off into dreamland, suddenly, I heard a creak in my closet. I slowly peeked on over as I removed the blanket from my head, and I have noticed that my closet door was open. I didn't know how to react. I couldn't scream. I had a knot in my stomach again, the heat building up underneath my blanket. And then, all of a sudden, I heard a laugh cry out in the darkness. I heard this woman whisper my name. I was frozen completely. And just as I began to remove the blanket from my head, I saw her standing by the edge of the door. She wasn't really on the ground either, her feet levitating. I saw her move her hand. Her hand was up, pointing at me. And her final words, before she had left, were, "I'm coming for you."